You're listening to Trueheart. Amy and Scott Mallon dive deep with celebrities, mavericks, visionaries, and real-life heroes to find out what sets their souls on fire. Here's Amy and Scott.
Hey guys, welcome back to another life-altering episode of Trueheart.
That's right. This episode is going to change your life. Season 2, episode 2. It's a good one.
2 and 2. 2 and 2.
See what we did there? 2022. Happy New Year again. I'm still getting it in there. Some might say it's too late, but you know what?
It's not creepy yet.
I'm still rocking my Happy New Year greeting to one and all. So hopefully you're digging the podcast. If you do, please give us a 5-star rating and a great review. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube for the full experience or wherever podcasts are found. We're so excited to welcome our good friend Ryan Devlin to the show. Ryan has starred on the hit television shows Veronica Mars, Brothers and Sisters, Jane the Virgin, and Cougar Town. He served as the host of E.T. on MTV, Rock the Cradle, and Are You the One? Ryan, along with fellow actors Kristen Bell, Todd Grinnell, and Ravi Patel, is the co-founder of the food company This Saves Lives, which is on a mission to end severe acute malnutrition. For every one of their delicious bars or breakfast products you buy, This Saves Lives donates a packet of life-saving food aid to a child in need. With over 30 million packets of food aid donated to date, This Saves Lives is just getting started. Let's get into it with Ryan. Happy New Year, Ryan Devlin. It's 2022. We're going to make it an awesome year, and we're so excited to have you on the Trueheart podcast and to be reunited with an OG friend.
I'm so excited to be here. I love you guys so much as humans and as podcasters. Longtime listener, first-time guest. And thanks for having me. I'm psyched. It's a new year. I feel really good about it. Or, you know, maybe I'm just saying that like I have the last 2 years, just because you got to put that positivity into the world and hope that it comes back at you.
Well, it can't be any shittier than last year. So right. Let's feel good about it. Just even like the bar so low now that if it's just even a little better, be like, wow, 2022 crushed it.
Don't test the universe, Scott. The universe might be like, oh yeah, motherfucker. Guess what?
Yeah, we got Omicron 2.0.
Yeah, exactly. And I just was reading on the news that there was this town in Texas where it was raining fish the other day. It's like this phenomenon called animal rain, where water spouts pull up, frogs or fish from lakes, and then it rains them down. And I was like, well, so that's how 2021 closed out. I do think that we have a good shot at 2022 being a slightly better year, as long as it doesn't rain fish anymore on top of everything else.
I mean, we could always, handle some plagues in 2022.
Yeah. We have one right now.
I mean, it's bananas.
Well, it can only get better. Just look at it that way. Hopefully 2021 was rock bottom. We're going to claw our way out of it.
Cheers to that. And I had a great year, just personally speaking, which I'm sure upsets all the people out there who had really tough years. So no, I'm not, I don't mean to devalue the struggle that we've all gone through. But just, personally, with the kids and spending a lot of time in nature and some big accomplishments at This Saves Lives, which, were hard-won accomplishments because we're running a business in a pandemic year. But all in all, I have to say that I'm not hating on 2021, but I am looking forward to 2022.
Good. We're glad it was a good year for you personally and professionally. And we know 2022 is going to hopefully rain down blessings on the world, because we all deserve it. So before we chat about all the amazing work that you're doing, Ryan, as a social entrepreneur, we have to talk about your career, because you've been a part of so many cool projects in Hollywood. So of all of your TV roles on Veronica Mars and Brothers and Sisters and Cougar Town and Jane the Virgin and Grey's Anatomy, what was your favorite role to play and why?
Love that question. So I've mostly played bad guys on TV, which, never ceased to kind of annoy my mom when she would go to book club, and her friends at book club would be like, was your son the murderer rapist on Law and Order SVU? And she's like, yeah, and 20 other shows. So for whatever reason, I played the bad guys, but the bad guys are fun to play. So, I
Is it
think I look.
possible? Is it possible that it's because you have this like look that's like total like boy next door, like just like all American? It could never be that guy. So it was like they were using you as like that. He's going to be the big surprise because no one would ever guess it could be him.
I hope so. I hope it's that and not like I walked into the casting office and they were like, "Oh, that's a rapist."
Oh, look at this creepy fucker.
Right. So yes, I hope it's the former and not the latter. But the benefit of that is it's really fun to play those roles because obviously you don't do that in real life. And so to play the bad guy, to be the creep, is really fun. I have played some nice guys. So you mentioned Brothers and Sisters and Cougar Town. I was like just like a real good guy in those shows, and I loved both of those shows in the casts of both of those shows. But your question was, what was my favorite? And I think Veronica Mars. It's an oldie but a goodie, but it was my first real acting role. I had been hosting a show called ET on MTV for quite some time, like Entertainment Tonight, but on MTV. And I'd done some like smaller guest spots, some Murderers of the Week on like CSI Miami and that kind of thing.
Some Murderers of the Week.
Yeah, the Murderer of the Week. But then I got cast on Veronica Mars and they didn't tell me like what role it was. I didn't read for that role. It was kind of this top secret role. And it shoots down in San Diego. And it was like summer camp. We were all like in our early mid-20s and it shot on location for all of us that were living in LA. And so we all stayed in a hotel down there. And so you hang out like at the hotel bar at night and you shoot together. And like, it was just like a real fun experience just as an actor. And then getting to play the role that I played, which was like over the course of a season, he was this serial rapist and like would like date rape these women at college and like shave their heads and keep a box of their hair in his closet and like hopefully
Oh,
nobody
wow.
takes that clip out of context and like uses it against me. It was a character. And so it was like a really like intensely dark role. And Kristen Bell's character, Veronica, and myself, like we were like these these enemies over the course of the season. And then Kristen and I became really good friends in that process. We're both from Michigan and we just like, we kind of hit it off and just became buddies, as I did with like the entirety of the cast. And we're still really close. A lot of us are incredibly close still. So yeah, I would say like that's probably my favorite acting role looking back. But there's been many others that I've really loved as well.
Well, with Brothers and Sisters, I have to ask because, you did such a great job on that show and playing Callista Flockhart's love interest. Were you ever worried that like Han Solo was going to kick your ass? Because that for me, like as an 80s baby, like Han Solo was the shit. Him and like Lando were my top two Star Wars characters. And was there ever any like tense moments on set with him, like watching those scenes where you were like, holy shit, this is the day that Harrison Ford like destroys me?
Well, it's funny because I think, look, that was a huge role for me to get because it was like a season-long arc. It was to play Kitty's love interest on the show, Callista Flockhart, who's incredible. I mean, I grew up watching Ally McBeal, and she's like such a talented actor. So it was such a dream job. But I think more excited than me getting that role was Kara, because Kara, my wife, whom you guys know, of course, she loves Harrison Ford. So I'd come back from a day of like these love scenes with Callista, and Kara would kiss me and be like, "I'm 1 degree from kissing Harrison Ford." And I'm like, "Yeah, but so was I." So we both won that. And fortunately, Callista was incredibly kind and gracious. And my first scene literally hadn't said probably 5 words to Callista. I show up on set, go through hair and makeup, wardrobe, all that stuff, show up at this coffee shop scene and, like ready to roll cameras. And it's a scene where I'm a barista at this coffee shop, and like she sneaks into the back room and she grabs me and we just like have this rockin' makeout session where we're like slamming against like the shelves of coffee and cups and that kind of thing. I mean, I hadn't known her for 5 minutes, and like we're immediately having to like make out like furiously, which is super intimidating for like a young actor to show up on set, and she's the star of the show and all that. Um, but she was so great and like just made it like fun and playful, and then um, we really hit it off. That show and working with Sally Field as well. I had some really great scenes with her. Um, that show, it's a really close second to Veronica Mars. Like that's a coin toss because that was just such like a every day I showed up on set, I was just like, God, I cannot believe I get to do this.
That's crazy. And what you're saying about like making out with someone on screen, it's a job, it's not like you are doing anything you're not supposed to do. But at the same time, like it's got to be a little bit like weird. You're a professional and you're doing it for a job. But I remember hearing the story that Nick Cage used to, when he had to do a makeout session, he would eat chopped onions, like raw onions, and
Ugh.
make out. And the idea was that the other person, like, there's no way she could ever be attracted to him because his breath was so bad. But then I was like, that's really unfair to the actress because now you're making it even hard. She's
Yeah,
got to
you're, like, giving
look
her
like
a
she's
handicap.
into you and like smell that disgusting breath.
That's hardcore.
But like, was it like you just sort of like compartmentalize it and it's like it's a job and whatever? That just seems like a crazy thing to have to go through.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It is a crazy thing to have to go through. Unfortunately, now, from my understanding, I don't have a lot of experience in this recently, but now I think the industry's gotten a lot better by having like intimacy coaches and experts on set because every love scene I've done has just been me and my scene partner kind of figuring it out with a little bit of input from the director, and that can get awkward when you don't feel comfortable showing what you're showing or rolling or moving or whatever you need to do. And so I actually think that the industry, largely spurred on by the Me Too movement, has gotten a lot more professional with that regard. But for my experiences, fortunately, none of my scene partners munched on onions. But there is that. There's a nervous energy and an awkwardness, and the body doesn't always listen to the mind. I remember this great quote from Denzel Washington that he has about having love scenes. I forgot who he was, who is this actress who was recounting it, and I forgot who he was talking to, but we can look it up and put it in the show notes. But it's a great, it's a kind of it was a famous movie that he had done, and he told her, as she's recounting it, she said, Denzel came up to me before our love scene. It was like a full nude love scene. And he said, I'm sorry if I get excited, and I'm sorry if I don't get excited. And it's like that's kind of the way it goes. Like sometimes the body doesn't listen to the mind, and you forget that there's a bunch of people around because you're an actor and you're supposed to get into it. And so then it starts to blur the line, not in any sort of like relationship way. If you're, I was married when I was doing Brothers and Sisters. I never thought about like running off with Callista Flockhart. Harrison Ford notwithstanding. But, I think you do have these opportunities to try to forget the cameras, try to forget the boom mics, and really get into a scene. And you just try to stay in character. But, it can be real awkward. I mean, I remember some scenes with Callista where like we were wearing the little nude colored, briefs because they wanted to show as much skin as ABC would allow and all that. And like you're sitting there and there's 25 other people in the room and like a bunch of big hairy guys wearing jean shorts holding boom mics and that kind of thing. And so,
Sexy.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you ever want to kill the mood, like all you have to do really is look around and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm not in a real bedroom.
Right. But you think about it and it's like as an actor, you're supposed to be in the moment and, emoting this like love or, the whatever is supposed to be happening. But at the same
Passion.
time, you're like, wait, but I'm also like in the back of my mind, I'm married and I'm not really into Callisto, but I have to do this. It's just such a crazy thing to have to go through as a human, acting aside. Like that's a tough thing to do. So it's like, I mean, great job. I mean, you
Thank
did
you.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, it is, and it does blur the lines. I mean, you know, there's it's not uncommon for co-stars on projects to actually start up real relationships. You know, maybe one would hope that it's two single actors who are, who are coming together on a show, but like faked chemistry can lead to real chemistry. It's like psychologists will say, if you're feeling sick to your stomach, or you're feeling, particularly down, force the muscles in your mouth to smile. And just in doing that, I mean, even if I'm not feeling like I want to smile, just in doing that, it actually releases a little bit of dopamine. And so the kind of fake it until you make it. And so if two actors are coming together and they're faking an intensely close relationship, that actually can lead, of course, as we've seen, famously millions of times, it can lead to a real relationship. Sometimes they last, sometimes they don't, but that's life as well. When you're married, it's a little bit easier when you're, I was married in doing Brothers and Sisters, and Callista was married, just like on Cougar Town, I was married, and Busy Phillips was married. And so, you go into these scenes and like you talk about what you want to do. And I always made a point to talk a lot about Kara, with my co-stars, and they would share a lot about their spouse, and that kind of helps to diffuse any potential like weirdness or like uncomfortable or misplaced attraction that might leak into a love scene. And I didn't do a whole lot of love scenes anyway, in my career, or haven't, up to this point. So usually you just have a lot of fun with them, and then you head over to the craft services table and crush some donuts, and then get shooting a different scene. And so it's definitely an interesting job. I really love being an actor. I host as well, and like hosting is different than acting, because in acting you're trying to forget the cameras, and in hosting you're addressing the cameras. And so it's two kind of very different muscles that you're exercising. And acting, I think, is really fun to try and forget about who you are for a minute and just throw yourself into a different character. It's a really cool escape.
You mentioned craft services. Now I can't get that out of my head. The idea of having a table with unlimited snacks and food that you can just nosh on all day long. I'd be 600 pounds, I think, if I was an actor.
That would legit be your nemesis. Scott has no
I have no
self-control.
control. When I go to a party, it's like Monopoly money with the food and the calories. It doesn't really exist. So I'm great when I'm home and on like whatever. But when I go somewhere and it's like a party or like been on set in some places, it's on.
What do you go to? Is it the dessert table? Is it the cheeses? It's
clearly you hit the salty, then you hit the sweet, then you hit the salty. Then
you're a professional. You know what you're doing. Yeah,
my favorite.
You're not an amateur.
No. I know what I'm doing. I go straight in. And I go for the good quality stuff. I'm not messing around with the junk. I'm not trying to get Doritos. Come on.
Right.
I go in for the nice stuff. Sometimes I got sliced cheeses. But what you guys are saying is way more important. I just had to throw out there. That's really where my head is.
No, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Like again, as somebody who, at least, in my career to this point, I haven't really had to watch my figure that much. But
you're skinny. You're skinny.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like naturally skinny, but I don't have to play like the hunk, right? Justin Baldoni is a friend of mine, and we were on Jane the Virgin together, and he's written and talked extensively about like the body image pressures that were put on him as always having to kind of have like the shirtless scene. And of course women get this, times 10. And very much like talked about, like, I know we're making a joke about the craft table, but there's actually like a real side to that, which is like after every scene, I would hit the craft table because I'm like, look, I'm poor. And like,
and these snacks are
there's
free.
Like free donuts.
The shit's free, and like not only am I going to eat all the calories I can, like I'm stuffing stuff in my bag, and I'm going shopping here. But then there's these other actors and actresses who, they know they've got a shirtless scene coming up, and like they would be not drinking water because they didn't want to take on water weight because they wanted to look shredded or look great in a bikini and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, there's the you have to have incredible self-control to be a certain type of actor or actress or celebrity in our business. Fortunately, I haven't had to contend with that. I could always hit the craft table and not worry about it. And This Saves Lives is on a lot of the craft table. So like, whenever we get a job, segues, I have
You
He's a
you
hosted
pro.
beat
once or
me. You
twice.
beat me
He is
to
a
it.
pro. He's
I
a
was
pro.
literally just gonna say best segue of all time from the
Oh,
craft
good.
table to the snack food company. Great minds think alike. All right,
Knocking it
so
out of the park.
No, but this is in all seriousness, like what you transitioned into, and I know you still, act and you're still doing that stuff, but what you created with This Saves Lives, and people who've watched our show know that, we
big
love
fans,
you.
big
We've talked about
supporters.
you guys. It's really extraordinary what you created. So just give us a little background on, how that got started. Cause here you are, you're acting, you have a really good career with acting and hosting, and then you started this company.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was such a like looking back at it now because we've been operating as a company for 8 years now, and so it's just wild how the brand has grown. Um, and for those who aren't familiar with This Saves Lives, we're a give back food company, and so for every product sold, we donate life saving nutrition to children in need around the world, and we work in tons of countries with incredible NGOs as our partners on the ground and um, primarily we are helping to save lives of children who are suffering from severe acute malnutrition. So that's the gist of the company, but it didn't start that way, of course. So it started um, as many ideas do, like just as a totally different thing, and that was a trip that Todd Grinnell and I, one of the co-founders of This Saves Lives, took to Liberia. And so Todd and I had been friends for some time through some acting classes and that kind of thing. And we both just had a heart for service. You know, probably not a huge shocker for listeners to learn that Hollywood, by and large, isn't entirely rewarding and fulfilling, like on a deep, purpose-driven level for most people. For some people, it is because they're just born to create, to be an actor, to they have that artist in them, and I think there is deep fulfillment that can come for that. But playing the murderer of the week for me was fun, really exciting, met amazing people, but it didn't fill my heart up. And so Todd and I were approached by a mutual friend of ours who was working on a charity project in Liberia. And there was this village whose bridge had been destroyed through this flood, and it really kind of cut them off from being able to get kids to school and get to market to have their businesses prosper and that kind of thing. And so we teamed up to raise some funds for that. It was $30,000, which is a ton of money. But we did. Todd and I made a bunch of like silly videos and hit up all of our friends, and this was before like the convenience of a lot of online fundraisers and platforms like Omaze and that kind of thing. And so we cobbled it together, and we took this trip to Liberia to meet the village and kind of help oversee the completion of the construction of the bridge. And while we were there, one of the stops that we took, kind of as one of these locals was showing us around, our guide there, he took us to this clinic, a refugee clinic that was treating children who were suffering from severe acute malnutrition. And so that's where kind of like, for the first time, that's where we came face to face with just the tragedy of severe acute malnutrition, which is 100% preventable. It just means kids don't have the nutrition that they need and that they deserve. And so in talking to these moms and these dads and these caregivers, the nurses, the doctors, we were like, look, how can we help? Like, what do you need? And that's when they walked us over and they showed us what's called Plumpy Nut, which is like this peanut butter paste. It's like a little sachet, a little packet of peanut butter paste that's fortified with micronutrients and vitamins and minerals. It's super high calorie, doesn't need to be refrigerated, doesn't need to be mixed with water. A child's dying. You tear this packet open, you give them maybe 2 or 3 a day for anywhere between 2 weeks and 30 days. And they're healthy and happy and able to just go back and be a kid and eat regular food and go to school. Um, Super simple. And we're like, wow, okay, well, these must be incredibly expensive. And they're like, no, they're, about 20 or 30 cents a piece. But we can't get enough of them. And so Todd and I were just like, our minds were blown. And Anderson Cooper on 60 Minutes had profiled Plumpy Nut. It's like been hailed as a miracle treatment. And so like we just returned after being out there to help a village build a bridge, but we returned to the States and we were like, Plumpy Nut, like this is the answer. We have to do what we can here. And so that was the original motivation. That was the why, right? Of what This Saves Lives ultimately became. Of course, fast forward many years of like making granola bars in our kitchens and working with nutritionists and food scientists and bringing on, of course, our founding team is myself, Ravi Patel, Todd Grinnell, and Kristen Bell. Kristen, whom I'd been friends with since Veronica Mars, and then bringing on more people and asking favors and learning what it even meant, like Googling, because this was before Trueheart. I couldn't Trueheart it. I could Google it, Googling, how do you sell granola bars? I mean, it was like literally that kind of rudimentary. But we just knew, like, we knew that there was a huge purpose. There were these kids who needed food aid, and we were going to do everything we friggin' could to get it to them. And so that's what got us started. And fortunately, now we have much smarter people working on the brand than me.
It's been absolutely amazing what you've accomplished in these 8 years with over 30 million packets of food aid donated and
It's
hundreds
amazing.
of thousands of kids' lives saved. And you're only getting started. So, now that you've been a social entrepreneur for almost a decade, what are the biggest lessons that you've learned on your journey?
Awesome question. I think everyone's journey, it's very individual, right? You're what you're going to do, what your business is going to do. But if you're interested in social entrepreneurship, the why really matters. That is the fire that will keep you going. That is the wind in your sails that will propel you forward when you don't know why the heck you were crazy enough to start this business, or when your eyes are bleeding because you've been looking at spreadsheets for the past 5 hours in a row and looking at how much cash, or in our case most of the time how little cash we actually had to keep the operation going. But you could always, in our case, always look back at these faces of these kids that we were serving and that we were wanting to serve. And that's what kept us propelled. That's what continues to fuel us, by the way, as a company that's now, as you said, and donated 30 million packets of food aid, enough to save over 200,000 lives. We still look at individual faces of kids in areas that we're serving and kids that still need help. And that's really what's driving us forward. Beyond that, like in terms of like practical knowledge, I think it's really important. It was really important in my case to be involved in every aspect of the business early on so that I had a foundational knowledge of everything. Production, like we made the first bars in our kitchens. And when we brought on our manufacturing partner, we were there for our initial runs to see how everything worked, to ask questions, to learn, to form relationships. Website design, packaging design, sales, all of this, sampling. I mean, I can't tell you how many times in the early days it was like me standing in, a little grocery store like Erewhon Foods in West Hollywood or Whole Foods when we first brought on our first Whole Foods, and like just standing behind a table and asking people to try our bars and asking for their feedback and telling them our story and learning, did you like it? Did you hate it? What could we change in our next round? That kind of thing. So, being heavily involved early on is usually a necessity for an entrepreneur because you can't afford to just like hire everything out, but it's also an incredible benefit so that when you can bring on a team, which I've been fortunate enough to be able to do at This Saves Lives over the years, you still have that foundational knowledge. And I think that's incredibly important. Lastly, I'll say this in terms of social entrepreneurship specifically, and then I'm happy to dive into any details that you want on this or beyond. But I think transparency and accountability are incredibly important when you're talking about a social impact business. So that would specifically be, like in our case, regularly reporting and telling our consumers where the food aid was going, how much we were sending, who it was serving. There's some brands create a product or a service and then try to slap some sort of facade of social entrepreneurship on top of it, and I don't believe there's a such thing as like bad charity. Like if there's charity, it's good because the world needs more charity, but sometimes that can feel inauthentic, I guess, if you're not really able to share the story, if you're not closing the loop on what you say you're going to do. So I would say that's really incredibly important to be able to do that, and something that we've done at This Saves Lives very well.
This Saves Lives is a ridiculously delicious food brand that gives back. Every single purchase sends life-saving food to a child in need. Co-founders Kristen Bell, Ryan Devlin, Todd Grinnell, and Ravi Patel launched This Saves Lives with a simple motto: buy a bar, feed a child, we eat together. Now with more than just bars, their products contain premium ingredients and are non-GMO, gluten-free, and kosher dairy. Their unique line of kids products all contain one full serving of fruits and vegetables and are safe for school. To buy their ridiculously delicious snacks, head on over to thisSavesLives.com.
Are you still wiping your butt with all that toilet paper you hoarded last year? How's that going for you? Let me introduce you to a new way to clean after you handle your business. Meet Hello Tushy. Tushy is the modern bidet that easily clips to any toilet and installs in just 10 minutes. Starting at just $99, Tushy sprays a precise stream of clean water and washes away all of that literal crap that toilet paper leaves behind. Upgrade your bathroom experience by going to HelloTushy, TUSHY.com. That's HelloTushy.com. Tushy saves the environment and reduces your carbon butt print. Tushy saves you money on toilet paper, and Tushy saves your butt. Go to Hello Tushy, that's TUSHY.com. Stop wiping, start washing with Tushy. For over a decade, lifestyle brand Half United has been using fashion to feed people all over the world. To break the cycle of generational poverty, the community provides gainful employment to local artisans and vulnerable communities who create their handmade and sustainable products. For every Half United product purchased, 7 meals are given to a child in need. Half United has donated over 1 million meals to date. Shop their beautiful jewelry, teas, handbags, and home accessories at halfunited.com and help fight global hunger.
Say ciao to tradition and hello to your new favorite plant-based Italian bistro in Los Angeles, Brothers Meatballs. Brothers Meatballs was founded by brothers and food industry veterans Mauro and Sergio Corbia, who hail from the Isle of Sardinia, Italy. When they joined forces with second-generation Italian chef Mark Middleman, their self-proclaimed brother from another mother, the concept for Brothers Meatballs was born. Mauro was the founder and creator of Mauro's Cafe inside Fred Segal, a long-standing LA hotspot. Dissatisfied with the amount of plant-based dining options reminiscent of the home-cooked meals their mother once made, the brothers were determined to create a menu so delicious it would appeal to herbivores and omnivores alike. Inspired by the food Mama so lovingly prepared for Sunday suppers, these meatballs are a modern take on a family classic. All menu items are 100% plant-based and made with Mama's secret ingredient, love. Angelinos can order lunch and dinner Wednesday through Sunday at brothersmeatballs.com.
You know, you touched on something that we have heard elsewhere, which is when you talk about the why, which has to be so powerful. What we had talked about before with Mickey was this idea that when you're starting a business, you need to strap in for 10 years. And if this is not something that you're willing to do for the next 10 years, devote yourself to it for the next 10 years of your life, forget it. Don't do it, because it takes that long. And so either it needs to be, I think, be one of two things. It can't be about the money. It can't be about anything like that. It has to be about, because your product is doing something that is so vitally important to you, and you just feel like there's such a strong need for it, and or that your mission is so important and what you're doing as a company is so important that when you hit hard times, you can fall back on that and look up at the posters or look up at the pictures and be like, oh yeah, like you said, like this is why we're doing it. And that is what carries you through 10 years. Where are you at now? Is it year 9? Are you guys?
We're pushing into year 9 now, and yeah. By the way, that's incredibly valuable advice. I think I never would have imagined when we started this thing that honestly we'd still be talking about. I've thought that it was just going to be like this little thing that helped support the one clinic in Liberia that we were trying to help, and then that would be that, or it would become this massive thing, and whatever, some Kellogg or something like that would come in and buy us, for $1 trillion or something. That's the entrepreneurial side of me that was like, oh yeah, we're going to get acquired. But what it's been is I think has been A, far more rewarding, and B, far more realistic, which is a steadily growing brand over the course of 8 years, where we've just grown year over year over year and brought on more customers and more revenue, and in turn been able to do more giving and add more countries and more giving partners and help more kids. And it's a marathon, right? So 10 years, it's the old adage for acting. It takes 10 years to become an overnight success. I think in business that could carry over directly. It takes 10 years to become an overnight success in a business. You have to put in the time. You have to grow in a way that's healthy. You have to prove your concept, and you have to be able to get through really challenging times. And so, to that advice of saying you have to be ready and willing to be in it for 10 years, I'd also say to any budding entrepreneurs out there, you also have to be ready and willing to fund it for 10 years. And oftentimes, you're not profitable in the early days, months, weeks, years of starting a company, especially if you're trying to be a growth company like we are at This Saves Lives. If you just want to make a profit and keep overhead low, you could sell at local farmers markets and bring on a couple local stores and that kind of thing, and do okay. But we wanted to be able to help as many kids as fast as we could, so that meant investing in growth, which means losing money every year, and plowing it all back into the business, which means you need investors. And so, while it's not as sexy to talk about for those who are interested in starting a business, capital is incredibly important. Being well funded, or understanding how you're going to become well funded at certain triggers in the life cycle of the company as you grow, should not be understated. And I think either having a great advisory board, a great mentor, or a great CFO helping you with that planning is incredibly crucial. And I wish we had had that earlier on in our company, because we were a little naive when we started, just thinking that it was immediately going to take off and pay for itself. And so, we learned some hard lessons that I'm glad I learned, and hopefully I can share with some listeners out there as they're taking on their projects to make the world a better place.
That's really important advice, because so many entrepreneurs struggle with whether they should bootstrap their company or go out and raise venture capital. And it's obviously a very personal decision, and there's pros and cons of going either route. But you've been so blessed at This Saves Lives, because you've had incredible support from your friends in the entertainment industry. As you mentioned, Kristen Bell, your co-star from Veronica Mars, who's, as we all know, now gone on to, be a Disney princess in Frozen franchise, and obviously The Good Place and many other hit TV shows, is one of your founding partners of the company. And you've had amazing support from Jimmy Kimmel and John Krasinski and Troyan Bellisario and Patrick J. Adams and many others. So how has that celebrity support helped further the mission of This Saves Lives?
Well, I mean, it's been massive, as one could imagine. That's another piece of advice that I'll have for budding social entrepreneurs out there. Get mega celebrities involved in your company.
It's just that easy.
Sure, just do that. Which is, it's funny because, I say that, tongue in cheek, but obviously we have benefited from that, with Kristen being a co-founder of the company, to some of the other names that you mentioned, and beyond, and just access to Hollywood through either those people or our own connections. It really helped us to get the brand seen early on, and it really helped us to get in the door of a lot of rooms where it happens. This is making me think of Hamilton song. We got into the room where it happened. And so that would be the room where it happens at Starbucks, for example, or Whole Foods, or some of our, our major partners out there in the early days. Now we've earned those meetings. But early on, you kind of have to use some tricks sometimes. And our first trick was calling ourselves "This Bar Saves Lives." We've since, kind of evolved into "This Saves Lives" because we now sell and offer things that go beyond bars, like kids crispy treats and oatmeal and granola pop. A lot of great products that go beyond bars. But we initially named ourselves "This Bar Saves Lives," and that's not something that's celebrity driven, and anybody out there can think. You have to think about, how do you break through the noise? And for us, there's a lot of noise in the bar category. Like, we entered the most crowded category in grocery, basically, and so we knew we wanted to break free of it. And breaking free of that noise meant naming ourselves "This Bar Saves Lives." So super catchy, helped us get a lot of meetings, but having celebrity connections also helped us get a lot of meetings, and it helped us to raise some funds early on. Not a lot, we had to prove our concept, but we were able to raise like a little friends and family kind of seed round. Um, Beyond that, it is interesting. Like, I think some people might assume that, given the pedigree of co-founders and investors and supporters of our company that we have, it would be a foregone conclusion that we would just be this massive hit, and that was an assumption that I made as well. But it's one that's proven to not be true, to be perfectly honest. When it comes down to it, people might try our product once because it's their favorite celebrity tweets about it or makes a Instagram story about it, or because it's got a crazy name and they see it at the grocery store, but they're only going to buy it again if they really love it. And so at the end of the day, the quality of the product and of our mission and our ability to tell that story is far more important and drives our growth and our success in a far more impactful way than the individual people that are involved in our company. So, that's why we've spent so much time making sure that our products are amazing and making sure that our impact is amazing, because that's ultimately what people care about.
Well, I mean, we're just kind of in awe of you, and it is, just to say it again. You said 200,000 kids' lives have
And
been
30
saved.
million packets of food aid
30 million
donated.
packets of food because of something that you guys started, because you went on a trip to Liberia and you just saw something and it hit you in the heart, and you then made that a reality. And it sounds like, by year 10, whatever, as you keep going, you're going to dwarf those numbers even. And so uh, you must feel, so as a human, just so much joy, like so much pride in having accomplished that. So that being said, all in the things that you've done under the entire umbrella of your entire career, was acting, hosting, and obviously being a social entrepreneur, what would you like your legacy to be? Or what do you want your legacy to be?
Um, I appreciate that question, because I think it's so important for everybody to ask themselves that question. And as we're just kind of into a new year now, it's good to reflect on what we've done, but it's also important to look forward and say, what do I want to do? And even stating it like that, what do I want my legacy to be? Um, I mean, first and foremost, I want my legacy to be that I'm a really good dad. I've got two amazing kids, and they're my world for sure. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. So if that's a common denominator, let's go ahead and take that out, because that's also an easy answer for those of us who are parents. Professionally, yeah, I want my legacy to be one that goes beyond what I made, or what I was recognized for in my entertainment career. I want my legacy to be one that was like throwing, hundreds of thousands of pebbles in a pond, and all those ripples went out and had an impact beyond that. And the way that you do that is through service. And service can be by starting a company, like This Saves Lives, or service can be volunteering or being a mentor. And I love both ends of that, because, with This Saves Lives, it's really hard to wrap your head around 200,000 kids, 200,000 families. What does that look like? 800,000 people or a million people? And then what does that look like in a village? Many millions of people. I mean, the ripple effects can be profound. And it's fun to try to think about that, but it's also kind of hard. my most impactful moments with This Saves Lives are when I've joined our giving trips and, gone to Haiti and visited our partner there, Second Mile Haiti, and met these incredible mothers. It's predominantly mothers who are helping their children to recover from severe acute malnutrition, and talking with them and holding these kids, learning their stories, learning about their hopes and dreams. And that's what really, is so incredibly personally fulfilling. And so I try to do that too, in my normal life. I like to volunteer at local organizations because writing a big check is a very important way to make a positive impact in the world. But serving yourself, being of service, like physically, emotionally, I think can be more personally rewarding. And I think charity should be rewarding. Philanthropy should be rewarding, personally. That's that reward center that hits in your brain that makes you want to do it again and again and again and again. So, for my legacy, I'd like to hopefully, leave something that goes beyond myself and have impacted a lot of lives. Paul Newman's a huge inspiration for me. I've done a lot of volunteer work at the Hole in the Wall gang camps, of which there's a network across the country. Painted Turtle is one in Southern California. That's not too far from you all, but they're all over the place. And when I volunteered there as a camp counselor, you talk to these kids. I mean, Paul Newman's one of the biggest actors of ever, right? And I talk to these kids, and they all know Paul Newman. They all know Paul Newman, who he is, because he's ever present at the camps. And I would say, well, who was Paul Newman? Because it's always good to just ask just open-ended questions with kids. And I'd say, well, who was Paul Newman? And they'd say, oh, he's the guy that made camp. Or they'd say, oh, he's the guy who's on the salad dressing. Never once in asking that question 100 times what had any child said, oh, he's the actor. Oh, he's Cool Hand Luke. Hollywood is it. Even if you're the biggest, even if you are the absolute biggest name in town and won all the awards, at some point in time, that's not remembered. I mean, it's not gone. You're going to be on celluloid forever. But if your goal is, and I'm speaking just for myself, as an actor, right? Because a lot of people get into acting because they want to be remembered, or they want to leave their mark, or they want to be larger than life, or be a celebrity. If your goal is to do that, honestly, the best way to do it is through service. Because through service, you continue to help, you continue to contribute, and continue to change lives long after your films or your TV shows are remembered. And so I'm really rewarded by that. I love to act, and that's why I keep doing it. But I think in terms of just personal fulfillment, making the world a better place, there's no better way to do that than through service.
I told you it'd be a life-altering episode, and it was.
I don't even recognize you anymore,
I know, when
Scott.
I do that voice.
Or are you
it's
Scott?
So cool when I do that voice. Anyway, Ryan, obviously an amazing human, an incredibly eloquent and accomplished person, and professional, and just also personal. So thank you for being on the show.
Ryan dropped so many gems. I hope you had a broom to swoop them all up, because there were lots of goodies there for you to marinate on, because Ryan is a legit social entrepreneur and
kind of a badass,
and world changer.
He's a badass in a very unassuming veneer.
Yeah.
He's a true badass, and he's humble about it. So
yeah.
It's cool to have people like that, like we were talking about, just getting good humans together. That's probably one of the greatest things you can do, is just surround yourself with good humans as friends. Obviously you can't choose your family. Hopefully they're cool. But if not, you find good friends that are good humans, and that shared experience is what will drive and inspire you to do better than even you thought you could. Yes,
and we are so blessed to count Ryan in our inner circle of superhumans that we absolutely love and admire. And want to leave you guys with a cool tip. Hopefully you'll think it's got value in your life and might want to work it into your 2022 routine. So this is my new gratitude journal for the year. If you know me, you know I love all things celestial. So I've got my sun and moon and stars on here. But what you do if you get yourself one of these journals is every day you write down 3 things that you're grateful for. And this will change your life. Studies show, you can look this up, so I'm not just like randomly, espousing this like medical or scientific advice. It's true. But the practice of being grateful and writing down the things that you appreciate in your life actually helps your brain development and your brain power, and also can add on years to your life, because you're not focused on what you might be missing out on. You're focused on appreciating what you have. And when you're able to tap into that, you will see it absolutely will change your life. So I hope you do that. It's something that I love doing, and I wanted to share it with all of you. And don't forget, like and subscribe to the show. And next week, me and my handsome boo, Scotty, will be back with another episode
I just want
of
to
the
say
podcast.
that was super awesome, and I'm really glad you shared that tip. But what I'm even more happy about is you pointed to your head when you said brain, because there was a chance that someone might have confused brain with another part of the body. So thank you.
This is my brain container, my head.
That's what she calls it.
So yeah, in other parts of the world, people might point to a different part of their body,
It's
but
not in your knee.
here,
So I just want to say,
Right there,
well
people.
done. And that is true. Amy is like a goddess when it comes to these tips of how to give back. And this is a really, as Ryan was talking about, service and just like what kind of meaning that brings into your life. This is just a way to just show gratitude just for yourself. And it really does open your heart and mind to other things that are out there than your own story. And when you open yourself up to something beyond just your own story, your life takes on a whole new meaning. So grab a journal. It could even just be on a notepad. It doesn't have to be something super cool and fancy like that.
but I will say $8 on special at Barnes & Noble, baby.
Boom. Truth bomb.
So go and get yourself a journal, whatever makes you happy.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.